Welcome back to The Explainer. So glad you're joining me today because, well, we are tackling a seriously high-stakes topic. Recently, a devastating car blast in Delhi sent shockwaves not just through the city streets, but straight through the nation's economy. When a sudden crisis like this strikes, the impact on tourism is immediate, and frankly, it's brutal. But how exactly does a travel startup navigate this kind of overnight chaos? Today, we're going to unpack the data from the recent Delhi incident, look at the sheer scale of its impact, and most importantly, we're going to build a concrete, step-by-step startup survival playbook. If you're building a business in the travel sector, or honestly, any industry that's vulnerable to sudden external shocks, you're absolutely going to want to take notes.
All right, let's look at our game plan for today. We'll start with the Delhi blast crisis, then touch on tourism's history of shocks. After that, we'll cover surviving sudden security crises, outline 3 recovery marketing strategies, and wrap up with allocating your marketing budget. Let's jump right in.
Part 1. The Delhi blast crisis.
You know, it's wild how fast a localized event can just snowball into a massive global travel deterrent. This crisis began on the evening of November 10th with a car explosion right near the iconic Red Fort. The human cost was absolutely tragic, 13 people dead and at least 20 injured. But look at the ripple effect that happened in just the next 24 hours. The panic spread like wildfire. Delhi was instantly put on high alert, and neighboring states like Uttar Pradesh and Haryana, and even places further out like Kerala and Mumbai, followed suit with heavy precautionary measures. And then the crisis breached international borders. The U.S. Embassy warned its nationals to remain cautious. The U.K.'s Foreign Office went even further, telling citizens to avoid any travel within 10 kilometers of the India-Pakistan border. Within mere days, a single event completely rewrote the security narrative for international travelers.
And that brings us to this number right here, 30%. Following the incident, hotel operators reported a staggering 30% drop in both domestic and foreign hotel cancellations. And the timing? Literally couldn't be worse. November through January are the peak months for Delhi tourism. This is when advanced reservations usually pour in. Instead, these travel businesses were watching a third of their peak season revenue just evaporate overnight.
On the ground, the reality was even starker. Local tourist guides operating right around the Red Fort, the epicenter of all this, reported that visitor numbers plummeted by up to 50%. I mean, the drop was so severe, it literally forced some local shops to completely shut their doors because there was zero footfall. And it wasn't just the mom-and-pop shops taking a hit. Major prominent chains like Sarovar Hotels experienced a very noticeable softening in inbound bookings. This was especially devastating for those long-haul markets, which, as we know, are historically way more sensitive to the kinds of severe security advisories we saw coming from the US and UK embassies.
Which brings us to Part 2, tourism's history of sudden shocks.
Now, if we zoom out and look at history, this kind of vulnerability isn't exactly new. It's actually a recurring nightmare for the industry. Just look at these historical precedents. The 2004 Andaman tsunami drastically slashed tourism down to just 5% of pre-disaster levels. After the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks, we saw a 15 to 20% drop in foreign tourists right during the peak winter season. The 2013 Kedarnath floods caused an 85% drop. And after the Pahalgam attack just this past April, tourist footfall remained at less than 20% of previous seasons, even 5 months later. So what's the takeaway here? Well, whether it's Mother Nature or a man-made disaster, sudden shocks obliterate peak season revenue. If you're running a travel startup, relying on hope is not a strategy. You have to have a recovery plan ready to go.
So let's talk about that plan. Part 3, surviving sudden security crises.
Okay, cancellations are surging. Revenue is drying up. Your operational priorities have to pivot instantly. Step 1 is basically financial life support. You need to secure capital from your investors immediately to prevent a total collapse and bridge the gap until consumer confidence eventually bounces back. But to get that capital, you have to prove you have your house in order, which means rigorously executing steps 2 and 3. These are actually derived directly from the police instructions given to hotel operators during the Delhi alert. Step 2, ensure your CCTV cameras are fully operational 24/7. Step 3, implement strict visa verification protocols for all foreign tourists. These aren't just, annoying legal compliance checkmarks. These are the fundamental operational anchors that keep your business safe, secure, and alive while the dust settles.
Moving on to Part 4, 3 recovery marketing strategies.
Normally, right around November to January, your standard peak season marketing would broadly promote all those magnificent historical sites, India Gate, Qutub Minar, Chandni Chowk. But post-blast, actually, scratch that, Standard marketing is completely useless right now. If people do not feel safe, they are not booking a tour to Jama Masjid. Period. Crisis recovery marketing requires a totally different playbook. Your messaging must focus heavily on safety, and it needs to be specifically targeted at those international travelers from long-haul markets who are currently spooked by those U.S. cautions and the UK's 10-kilometer border warnings. You can't just ignore the elephant in the room. You have to address it head-on.
So to execute that targeted communication, you're going to need these 3 key growth initiatives. Number 1, launch reassurance PR. Don't hide your new security measures, advertise them loudly. Let your customers know about your 24/7 CCTV and your strict visa verification protocols. It transforms what might seem like an inconvenience into a powerful badge of safety. Number 2, target long-haul markets. Deploy specific digital ad campaigns to these highly sensitive tourists, showcasing your secure, well-monitored environments, maybe even steering the focus toward completely unaffected safe zone destinations in your portfolio. And number 3, pitch a safety narrative. Remember those investors we talked about earlier? When you ask them for a capital injection, you can't just beg for a lifeline. You have to present them with this exact proactive recovery marketing plan, proving you have a rock-solid strategy to rebuild footfall.
Which brings us to our final step, Part 5, allocating your marketing budget.
All right, here is how you strategically divide your marketing budget to actually fund this recovery and counter that massive cancellation surge. We're allocating a full 40% straight to reassurance PR campaigns. Restoring trust requires heavy lifting. You need articles, you need press releases, and direct communications driving home that safety is your absolute top priority. Another 40% goes directly to targeted digital ads for those long-haul markets. Remember, international travelers bring in really high value, but they are the fastest to flee when embassy warnings drop. Funding hyper-targeted digital campaigns directly counters those specific geographic fears. And finally, take the remaining 20% and invest it in local security partnerships. Fund visible, local safety measures and collaborate with local authorities. It gives all your PR campaigns real, boots-on-the-ground credibility.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've seen the hard data. We know how quickly a single localized incident can just clear out an entire peak season, causing 30 to 50% drops in footfall in the blink of an eye. But we've also mapped out the concrete steps to secure your operations, the exact marketing shifts required to rebuild trust with those nervous international markets, and the specific budget allocations you need to actually fund that recovery. So I want to leave you with one very real, very sobering question as you look at your own business model today. Could just startup survive a 50% drop overnight? Really think about it. Plan for it. Don't let a sudden shock be the end of your story. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.